Huh? Okay, what the hell? Who's calling me? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Just, are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me calling me at this time? Like, seriously? Okay, I just shut off my phone. Oh. No. Boom. Yeah, so there's definitely, it's definitely sheared off. I mean, yeah, see, there's definitely some shear going on. See, there's a northwest wind here. So the winds turn north. So the center is somewhere like in this area here. This is where I would think the center is. Yeah, so it's definitely on the western side of the convection. Oops, definitely not. I do not want to look at that. Visible high res. Or, yeah, visible shortwave. It's probably better to look at. Well, it is definitely better organized. Okay. Shoot. So here, 66. So here's where it is. So yeah, I don't think that's correct. Here. A lot of rain in New York City. Looks like the remnants here. Okay. Hold on, I'm gonna log in. So $968. Oh damn, that's a pretty strong system, by the way. 980. Looks like I might be planning a trip. $993. Are you kidding me? Yeah, that's just weird. Jesus Christ. I mean, it's gonna be going northeast, but still, damn. Right into Cape Cod. Yes. Oh my God. Right over the Cape. Yikes. Ooh. Yep, looks like I'm gonna be saying Sunday into Monday. And let's check the 12Z. Wow. Okay. Yes, August 17th. Uplift is continuous. Not good. Doesn't 2020 200, but this time it's uplifting at a faster rate. Yeah, so let's look at the, okay, so still pretty high. The sulfur emissions are still pretty high. -7°C. Yeah, it's a temporary island. It erupts often. Rare natural event in Alaska sees 3 volcanoes erupting at the same time. Okay. Oh. Activities winding down. Pavlov, let's check Pavlov. Ooh, activities picking up. Looks like more lava fountaining right here, so see a little pickup in activity there. And that is local time because Anchorage, it should be about. Oh yeah, see, right. Says me in their poetry. Ooh, wow. Little harmonic tremors there, look at that. ATKA, I've never heard of this volcano before. Mount Kuchif. So you see how the clouds are going north here, right here. You see that? So let me slow down. You see that northward movement? So the low is somewhere in this area here, right under that deep convection. So there's a lot of deep convection right now associated there. So let's look at long wave again. So there's a good amount of convection right now. So this storm is definitely trying to get more organized. This is near Bermuda, just south of Bermuda actually. So waters off of New York, I would say are in the low 70s because we haven't really been having any hot weather. It's been pretty, yeah, about 74 or 75 degrees. I mean, that's not unusual. Like, that's normal basically. It's a little warm, but still, like, not terribly warm. That's a little warm, but okay. So this is what I want to show you, is the water temperatures here. For $77 degrees, 77. That is about the same latitude as, yeah, New Jersey. 440. 75. Virginia Beach. Wow, in the mid 80s. Wow, look at that. Whew. Yikes. That is the Gulf Stream. That is the Gulf Stream, actually. Yikes. Yeah, 80, mid to upper 80s again. So, '84, '85. Wow, that's very warm. That is definitely warm enough to support a major hurricane. Yeah. So, entering an area of very conducive temperatures. Also, the environment here could become more conducive. Let's see, you're having shear coming in, northeast shear. So you see this, it's going to enter an area of light shear because you're going to have, well, because it's going to be moving the same direction. So what you're going to have right now, the shear is actually weakening. So this will actually aid in the outflow. This will actually aid it in the outflow. Because see, it's starting to have some outflow now. Yet it's, so even though there's outflow coming in from the northeast, this is actually great. This is what you want if you want a strengthening system. Because you're having an anticyclone, high pressure over the system. This will limit the shear and cause the system to intensify. This is what you want to see if you're a system. You want to see that. You want a high pressure system to build over you, because that's basically your outlet. That's basically the way you could strengthen. When you have wind shear, the latent heat release that powers the tropical system is disrupted. How do hurricanes form? Basically, it's the release of latent heat. The heat from the ocean is released through convection. So as the latent heat is released, the system is able to strengthen as storms are able to form. So latent heat means trapped heat. It's latent. It's not being used. Latent heat. So latent heat basically is what converts a solid, change the temperature, see. So that's how tropical systems work. And oceans provide a huge amount of latent heat. And when a tropical system moves over land, they weaken. However, you can get a rare event known as something called the brown ocean effect. Right. Tropical storm Erin is an example of this effect, forming an eye over Oklahoma. Boom. Yep. Brown ocean effect. Over Western Australia, it strengthened into a tropical depression and later tropical storm. It became disorganized after entering the Indian Ocean. Claudette formed over southern Louisiana, possibly from the moist soils from recent flooding. The system weakened to a tropical depression before it re-strengthening back to a tropical storm, inland over North Carolina. Tropical storm Claudette. See, it formed into a tropical storm inland. Actually, it already was basically a tropical storm. But then it reformed over North Carolina. Like, come on. Like, really. Inland over North Carolina. The brown ocean effect is an observed weather phenomenon involving some tropical cyclones after landfall. Normally, hurricanes and tropical storms lose strength when they make landfall. But when the brown ocean effect is in play, tropical cyclones maintain strength or even intensify over land surfaces. While these systems are highly common in the United States and China and Australia, in the United States, China, and Australia is the most conducive environment where such storm systems are called agua bombs. Aguca bombs. Huh. An eye over like land. Wow. See, it makes landfall. It's actually more impressive after making landfall. Then intensifies over land. Tropical storm Kelvin hits Australia, then intensifies over land. An unusual meteorological event played out in northwest Australia over the weekend when Category 1 tropical cyclone Kelvin made landfall, then intensified after landfall. Visible in satellite loops showed that the eye grew more distinct for a few hours after landfall. And the eye wall cloud surrounding the eye expanded in aerial coverage. Radar loops showed an increase in the storm's organization after landfall, and the low-level spiral bands becoming more organized. According to the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, Kelvin reached its peak intensity of 90 miles per hour when the storm was centered about 10 miles inland at OZ at 0Z Sunday, February 18th. The storm then began to rapidly weaken about 3 hours later as it pushed further inland. Kelvin was rapidly intensifying as it approached landfall. Nevertheless, we formally expect tropical cyclones to weaken once their center moves over land. Actually, it turns out that Kelvin's behavior is not that unusual over northern Australia. There have been a number of tropical cyclones that have intensified over this part of the world. The hypothesis for the redevelopment of warm core cyclones over northern Australia. Solomon came up. Aguka bombs. Northern Australia has a deep layer of very hot, sandy soil, and when the soil is wetted by the first rains of an approaching cyclone, the land provides a ready source of heat and moisture to the landfalling storm, allowing it to intensify for a few hours. The computer simulations show that once the storms get sufficiently isolated from their oceanic source of moisture, the rainfall they produce is insufficient to keep the soil wet enough to transfer significant quantities of heat, and the storms then decay rapidly. Kelvin is an interesting case. It doesn't seem to fit perfectly in the intensify further inland once rainfall and the intensify during and after landfall. Despite this, however, I suspect that the underlying physical mechanism However, examples. Remnants of area suddenly re-intensified to a maximum sustained winds of 60 miles an hour a short distance west of Oklahoma City. The National Weather Service remarked the intensification resulted in what amounts to an inland tropical storm. At 9:30 UTC, the system presented an eye-like feature and a spiral rain band and produced wind gusts of over 80 miles an hour. However, a few hours later, the depression began weakening again. Despite displaying tropical characteristics, the National Hurricane Center determined the system was not a tropical cyclone over Oklahoma and classified it as a, quote, low. The low continued into southeastern Kansas. Come on. Don't tell me that is not a tropical storm. Come on. That is a tropical storm. That is actually a very healthy tropical storm. That is actually because of the brown ocean effect. There was a lot of rain in Oklahoma that year. The soils were very saturated, and the soil was warm and moist enough that basically it gave the tropical system a secondary source of energy, basically. That's what happened. And looking at this system, more intensification looks like. Yep. as a tropical depression near Corpus Christi. Likewise, station pressure values reduced to sea level pressure were lower at several measurement sites on 19th of August than those recorded while Erin was classified by the National Hurricane Center as a tropical cyclone. During this period of lowest pressure, Erin developed an eye wall structure and spiral bands as observed by radar. The intensification occurred within the domain of multiple observing networks and platforms, which provided rich detail on the near-surface behavior of Erin and embedded processes. Erin's re-intensification was not only unique in its magnitude, but also in the breadth of related available observations. The manuscript describes the intensification of Erin over West Oklahoma as observed by the Oklahoma Mesonet, the Fort Cobb, and Little Washita micronets of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Agricultural Research Services, Grazing Lands Research Laboratory, and the National Weather Service Upper Air Doppler Radar and Surface Observing Networks. But why did it? The days prior to Erin's landfall were warm and sunny, with maximum air temperatures approaching or exceeding 40 degrees Celsius. It's over 100 degrees during much of the state. Consequently, soil temperatures at 5 and 10 centimeters below bare soil rose significantly during this period, approaching 40 degrees Celsius at 10 centimeters and exceeding this value at 5 centimeters. According to the final best track planning, synoptic by strong soil temperatures. August 19th. It doesn't look like a tropical storm, it just looks like a bunch of thunderstorms, right? But then, look what happens. Boom. Yep, definitely is a tropical storm, in my opinion. because very warm soil temperatures, all that rain overrunning, ahead of the storm. So then basically a lot of latent heat and boom, rapid intensification. Low is going to be somewhere in this area here. Water vapor. Whoa. See right here, see how the wind shear actually changes direction almost? Right here. This is not good. Okay, you see this upper level low right here, right? And this tropical low right here, and this tropical storm, maybe hurricane here. Yeah. This is going to be a problem because then it could scoop up the low this way. Miles an hour. Oh, 65 now. 20,000 cases in Texas? Jesus Christ, Greg Abbott is a moron. And let's look at Florida, shall we? They actually managed to get their cases down, and now it's just blowing right up again. Oh yeah. Yeah, there's probably an issue here. See, it says active cases. I don't think that's correct. I think it went down and then. I'm going to show you a cool little video. Yeah, that's what I'm watching. Whoa, yeah, I want to watch this one. Yes.
This is the new Tesla Model S Plaid, and it's an absolute marvel of, well, everything. But it's especially known for speed. This does 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. Yes, you heard that right. 2 seconds, 0 to 60. Your favorite supercar or hypercar, this family sedan is faster. And it doesn't matter which your favorite supercar or hypercar is, this is faster than all of them. This car is amazing, and today I'm going to review it. Before I get started, be sure to check out Cars and Bids, which is my enthusiast car auction website with cool cars from the modern era. We've had some great sales recently on Cars and Bids, including this manual transmission Porsche Cayenne, which sold for just over $30,000. This E46 M3 Competition 2006 model sold for $44,500, and this 2018 Ford Raptor brought $68,000. If you're looking to sell your cool car from the modern era, the 1980s and beyond, Cars and Bids is the place to do it. We have an amazing platform, and you will get the most views and interest in your car. And if you're looking to buy a cool car from the modern era, check out Cars and Bids, now with free listings through the end of August using the promo code BIRTHDAY when you submit your car. So let's talk Plaid. The numbers are staggering, and they are endless. This car starts around $130,000, which is big money, but it delivers in a big way. Tesla claims this is the first production car to ever do 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds. There's been some controversy about the exact 0 to 60 time, but fighting over tenths of a second is missing the point. This car is fast, unquestionably the quickest 0 0 to 60 car on sale ever. And it's not just 0 to 60. The Model S Plaid will run a quarter mile in the 9-second range, which is absolutely catastrophically fast. This will outrun every other vehicle you will ever encounter on the road in the entire history of the production automobile, period. But wait, there's more. This car has over 1,000 horsepower. Tesla says it's capable of 200 miles an hour, which is definitely supercar territory. And it's fully electric like all Tesla models, and it can go just under 400 miles fully electric between charges. And it has 5 seats, so it's practical. In fact, one of the selling points for this car on Tesla's website is that you can get an entire bicycle in the back without having to remove a wheel. That is a selling point of the world's quickest car ever made. And today I'm going to show you all of it. First, I'll take you on a tour of the Model S Plaid and show you all of its many quirks and features. Then I'll get it out on the road and drive it, which sounds terrifying, frankly, and then I'll give it a Doug score.
Well, he uploaded the video, so...
All right.
Yes, he's he's the best driver like this. Evolve is actually going all electric in only 10 years.
Alright, I'm going to start the quirks and features of the Plaid inside the car with the interior, because that's the big news for the Plaid, aside from all the power, because the interior has been fully redesigned for the Plaid. Everything is new in here. Tesla says they've only kept the seat rails, and you'll be able to see all the new stuff as I go through everything. But probably the most important and controversial new item in this interior is the steering wheel, which, as you can see, isn't a wheel. Tesla calls it the yoke, and it's supposed to be like a fighter pilot joystick kind of thing, because this car is so fast it deserves something special to control it. Like I said, very controversial. A lot of people are viewing it kind of as a gimmick and something that's sort of silly and stupid. Others think it's really cool. Generally, it's accepted that it's kind of difficult at low speeds because you don't have a wheel to just grab. I don't know, we'll see what I think in a minute when I drive this car near the end of this video. I haven't tested it out yet, but that is the yoke, and it's standard in all Plaid models, at least for now. But beyond the yoke itself, just being a yoke, there are several other interesting yoke-related items in here, starting with the controls. Tesla has a desperate desire to make all their interiors tremendously minimalist and get buttons and clutter out of everything, and that means some unusual controls in this car. For instance, you look at the steering column and you don't see any stalks coming off for turn signals or windshield wipers. It's all been integrated into the yoke or the screen. Turn signals are now a button on the left side of the yoke. You can press over here, left or right, and that will turn on or off your turn signals while you're driving around. No more stock like every other car. Headlights are not mounted on the dashboard, a little dial you turn like most cars. Instead, you press this button on the yoke and it pulls up the headlight control in the center screen, and then you can adjust stuff from there. That's how you activate the headlights in this car. And check it out, even the horn is a little button on the yoke. You can see over here on the right side of the yoke, you have a little horn symbol. You press that and the horn sounds, and that's how you turn on the horn in the Plaid. All little buttons, controls integrated into the yoke. Everything here is weird. And it gets weirder because you look around the yoke, the center, and you'll notice there's no gear selector anywhere in this car. You can't shift into gear on the column. There's no like buttons in the center. How do you do it? The answer is it's predictive. It predicts what gear you want to be in, and then it will automatically shift into that gear. For instance, I just got in the car and turned it on. The first thing that pops up in this gauge cluster screen is it says put your foot on the brake if you want to go into reverse. How did it know I want to go into reverse? Probably because sitting in front of me there's a large garage door in a house that I don't want to hit. So you put your foot on the brake and then you're in reverse and you can back up, and that's the predictive gear selector in this car. Now, it's worth noting you can easily override this predictive gear selector anytime you want. On the screen, there's this little car icon over to the left, and you move that car in the direction you want to travel. So if I did want to go forward, like move up a few feet, whatever, I would slide this car forward and then I would be in drive. If I wanted to go in reverse, I would slide the car backwards, then I'm in reverse, and that is sort of the backup gear selector in this car. Your main gear selector is predictive. The car suggests a gear and you go with it, and your backup is a little slidey car on the screen. But you're thinking, what if this stuff fails? What if the screen fails? You can't get the car into gear then? And the answer is no. There's actually another backup gear selector, and that would be in the center console here. Next to the hazard lights, you can faintly see outlines for PRND. This does not work. It's not programmed to turn on unless the screen itself crashes or fails. And then somehow it knows that the screen has failed and it turns on the gear selector, and then you can shift into gears down here using these buttons. But they're going to be completely dark until that happens. You're supposed to just use the gear selector on the screen, or just listen to the predictive gear selector tell you what gear you should be in. But anyway, speaking of the screen, this giant center screen in this car is all new, part of the redesigned interior. I will get to that in a second. First, I want to talk about some other stuff, starting with the climate vents. There are none. You don't see any. You look around this interior, there's no big climate vents like every other car, and that's because they are hidden. Tesla has hidden the climate vents on the driver's side. You can see there's sort of this opening below and above the gauge cluster screen, and that's where your climate control air blows from. Over on the passenger side, they've sort of hidden the climate vent into these lines on the dashboard, this trim, and that too is a hidden air vent for the passenger side. Again, Tesla really wanted to make this interior minimalist, to declutter, and that meant sort of removing all of the, well, clutter, including climate vents. They're now hidden, but they do blow out a lot of air. It feels just like regular climate vents in here. You just can't see them. And in fact, this minimalist trend continues basically everywhere you look. Let's go into the center console. You can see there's nothing in here. In fact, the only control is the hazard lights in the very center. That's it. Everything else is just, well, nothing, no controls. It's all integrated into the screen. With that said, there are some neat items worth noting in here. For one, above the hazard lights, you have this little sort of velvet pad. That is a phone charging pad. You put your phone down and it will inductively charge your phone. It doesn't like say what it is. It doesn't give you instructions, but if you put your phone on it, it will charge. Again, minimalist. They don't need to tell you what it is. You figure it out. Also in the center console, you have kind of a trick little center storage area in here. You can see right now it's just this large hole of storage in the middle. But if you tap on this little lower silver panel, a smaller storage area reveals itself to you, or you can press it again and put it away. Or if you tap on the back part of the storage panel, cup holders will come out and reveal themselves to you as well, or again, you can tap them and put them away. You also have a lid for this center storage panel, although strangely enough, it only goes over half of the storage panel. I guess they're thinking that most people will want the cup holders to be exposed all the time, so the lid doesn't have to cover the whole thing, but it's still kind of weird. Now behind all that, you also have another center storage area with an armrest on top, and that is, like in most cars, just little center console storage. Nothing weird there. But anyway, next up, let's talk center screen, because this is the nerve center of the car. All of the controls, and there are some very interesting quirks and features in this center screen, which I will show you. But let's start with the climate control. Now, you can easily make simple adjustments to the climate control by tapping the little number in the lower left. That's your air temperature, and you can move that left or right to change the temperature, and you can also turn on your heated or cooled seats there, and the window defoggers, that sort of thing. But if you want more climate controls, you have to press that climate control area, and then it pops up a larger climate control screen. Now, within that screen, there are quite a few interesting quirks. For one, you can choose where the air is flowing from by tapping like a virtual image of the dashboard on the car. You can see, tap the passenger side and it starts to flow out the passenger side, or you can turn it off, direct the air in other ways, and that's kind of a cool look since you can visualize exactly what you're seeing. Now, at the top of these controls, you have a little slider you can use to adjust fan speed, but my favorite part here is you have a little atomic button that you can press, and that will maximize the air speed coming out, and you'll get bombarded with air conditioning or heat by pressing the atomic symbol, which I guess makes sense. And speaking of interesting symbols in here, how about the one for the heated steering wheel, which of course...
That's actually biohazard defense mode. Okay. I'm going to have to comment. I'm just going to let him know.
is actually a heated yoke. You turn it on here and it looks like a yoke with heating. It's just kind of funny to see it showed like that in a little image. Now in the climate controls, you also have two other really cool settings in here. One is dog mode, you can see over on the right. If you activate that, the car can be completely turned off and locked, but the climate control will stay on and keep it cool in here so that you can leave a pet in the car if you want to run into the store or whatever. And also a big warning pops up on the screen saying this car is in dog mode. Don't worry, the dog is just fine, in case like passersby see the dog and start to become frantic because they think it's gonna die. Now, the other cool mode you have in here is called camp mode. You can see over on the right, camp. You press that and it will leave on the car, the climate control, all of the functionality until it gets down to 20% battery. Normally the car will automatically shut off after a while. Frankly, most cars do, even non-electric ones. But if you have camp mode on, I guess it thinks you're like sleeping in the car, whatever, and you're gonna want all the stuff to remain on. And it will only shut off at 20% because it doesn't want to completely kill the battery while you're inside. But that's a cool feature too. But anyway, next up, moving on from climate to the icons along the bottom of the screen. These are just like the shortcuts that you use frequently. So for instance, your phone is down here, your music and media can be accessed down here. Pretty simple stuff, the camera system in the car. But my favorite little icon along the bottom is the toy box, which brings up the entertainment features. There are quite a few. One of them is a web browser that you can use to access the very finest websites on the internet. You can see them in full screen resolution in your Tesla using your Tesla web browser built into your giant center dashboard screen. But the toy box also has some actual toys. For instance, there's a video game console built into this, and you can play various different games using the arcade function. There are all sorts of preloaded games. My very favorite is this like beach buggy racer game where you can actually race cars while you're sitting in your car. And here's the coolest part. You use the car's controls to control the cars on the screen. And you can see I'm racing right now using the actual accelerator and brake pedal from the Plaid and the yoke to steer my little car as it's driving along in the video game. I am using an actual steering wheel and stuff to steer in a game, and that is just the coolest thing in the world. And it's a cool way to pass time, like if you're waiting for someone or whatever. And of course, you can use it like while you're sitting in your garage, because unlike gas-powered cars, there are no emissions coming out of this. So you can just sit there and play video games in your car to your heart's content if that's what you want to do. But
if you skip this video, you're gonna miss a rare opportunity to win a US legal Nissan Skyline GTR and $60,000 cash. Or if you don't want to take home the car, you can choose to take home $200,000 cash instead. The choice is yours. Click the
unquestionably, the craziest thing in the toy box is the section called Boom Box, which allows you to change car sounds. What I mean But unquestionably, the craziest thing in the toy box is the section called Boom Box, which allows you to change car sounds. What I mean by that is you can have a driving sound appear so that while you're accelerating, a custom sound plays as if it's an engine note. You can choose between these various different sounds that will play while you're accelerating, since this car doesn't have an engine note. That is crazy, but even crazier is the horn sound. You can customize the sound of the horn. You can see here there are various different preset options you can use to change the sound of your horn. And yes, they change the sound of your horn. Take a listen. Right now I'm pressing the horn and it sounds like a normal car horn. But I replace the horn sound with, let's say, applause, and then I press the horn button and, well, take a listen. Yes, that's right. It's now applauding when I press the horn button. And you can make the horn do other things too. Here's another horn sound. And if that wasn't crazy enough, you can change the driving sound and the horn sound to your own custom sounds. You plug in a little USB and you can actually like upload your own sounds to the car, so you can have the horn sound like whatever you want. If you want the horn to be your own voice yelling, you can do that. And every time you press the horn, you'll be yelling in your car. That is just insane. But anyway, some other interesting items in this center screen area. If you go into pedals and steering, you will see the option for drag strip mode, a little rocket on it. And if you put the car in drag strip mode, it like lowers itself and then it takes a few seconds to prepare for a launch. The fastest launch in the world of any production car. There's also a little icon over here that says how to launch, and it explains exactly the procedure you have to go through in order to get the fastest possible launch time. Pretty insane. And one other cool safety setting, you can turn on or off Sentry Mode, which is this feature that sort of monitors the car when it's parked. And if something were to... Pretty insane. And the fastest launch in the world of any production car. There's also a little icon over here that says how to launch, and it explains exactly...
Firmly hold the brake with your left foot. Fully press and hold the accelerator pedal while holding the brake pedal for optimal traction. Wait for ready to launch message, which shows when front suspension has lowered into cheetah stance.
Exactly the procedure you have to go through in order to get the fastest possible launch time. Pretty insane. And one other cool safety setting, you can turn on or off Sentry Mode, which is this feature that sort of monitors the car when it's parked. And if something were to bump up against the car or like push the car or hit it, it will activate all the exterior cameras so it will show what's going on. And it will alert you that Sentry Mode has turned on your phone, which is pretty cool. That way you can see exactly what happened when you were parked, when something bumped up against the car, so you know what's going on. And finally, one other very cool feature of the screen working in conjunction with the yoke. I love how you adjust the mirrors and the steering wheel position in this car. You go into controls and you turn on like the mirror control activation, and then you use this little dial on the left side of the steering wheel to move the mirrors up, down, left, right. You can do it all with this little dial. That's so cool. And the steering wheel yoke control is even cooler. You actually move the dial and the yoke will move up, down, in, out, depending on how you're adjusting the dial, and I just think that's so awesome. The coolest part is when the dial is not being used to move the mirrors of the steering wheel, it's the volume control. So this is like a multi-purpose dial depending on exactly what you're doing and which function you're using. Love that. And next up, speaking of screens, important to mention this car has a gauge cluster screen directly above the yoke, right in front of the driver, just like the prior Model S did, but unlike the Model 3, which only has the center screen. And this gauge cluster screen tells you obviously all the pertinent information, like your current range, the outside temperature, the speed you're going, and it shows you various autopilot things that you might need while you're driving, where cars are around you, that sort of thing. Nice digital gauge cluster screen, nothing too unusual or special or weird about it, but it's there, and frankly, it's pretty useful compared to the no gauge cluster in the Model 3. I definitely prefer to have something right in the driver's line of sight. With all that said, and my clear enthusiasm showing for all the cool technology and screen stuff in this car, I think there's a little bit of screen overkill in the pursuit of minimalism in this interior. For example, in a normal car, you want to lock out the windows so your kids can't roll up and down the windows incessantly. You just press a little button by the window switches and then they're locked out. In this car, you gotta go to the screen, press the little car icon in the bottom left to pull up the settings, go to the lock section, and then tap on the window lock. It's just excessive. It's a 4-step process. It's something that could have been easily integrated into the window switch area in the doors without really screwing up the minimalism thing. And frankly, I will never get behind the idea of an electronic screen-based release for a glove box. Same deal. You could have made a latch down here at the bottom of the dashboard that nobody would have ever really seen, but instead you gotta go into the screen, the car settings section, the controls, and that's how you open the glove box. Just a little excessive, and it's a little too screeny. Seems like they've maybe gone too far in that direction. But most of the stuff I think is really cool. But anyway, next I want to move on to the last interior function, at least in the front seats, and that would be getting out, opening the door. To do that, you press this little button on the door pull that's like a car with a door open. You press that, and then the door electronically opens, and you push it open the rest of the way, which is pretty cool. But you're thinking, well, this is an electric car. What if the battery dies? How do you open the door then? You have a backup right in front of the window switches. This is a door handle, and if you pull that, it will mechanically unlatch the door so that you can get out and not use the electronic system. The problem with doing this is when you pull that latch, an icon pops up on the screen that says your window trim may be damaged by using this mechanical backup door release. I suspect that's because when you use this release, the window doesn't do its little slight drop to break the seal with the door trim, and so you might damage the trim because of that. So use the electronic door release when you're climbing out. And next up, we move on to the back seat. in the Plaid, and the first thing you notice back here is it's way better than the outgoing Model S model. Like I said, the entire interior was redesigned, and one benefit was more interior room, especially for the back seat, and you can really tell. I now have a lot more space back here, leg room, knee room, headroom, just a lot more space in the back for rear passengers, which is nice since this is ultimately like a people-carrying family sedan. Also worth noting, you do have 3 across seating back here. A lot of high-performance 4-door cars are 2 in the front, 2 in the back, but not this one. You have 3 seats, a middle seat, seat belts, so you have 5 total seats in the Plaid. Now, if you want a center armrest, you also have that possibility here. Strangely enough, it's electronically released. There's not just a simple latch. There's a little button you press behind the headrest, and you can hear it release electronically, and then you drop this center armrest, and you have cup holders and a storage area, and of course a nice little armrest to make your existence more comfortable in back. But the big news in the back seat of the Plaid is the screen in the center back here facing the...
What in the...
Model S model, like the rest, to make your existence more comfortable in back. But the big news in the back, enough, it's electronically released. There's not just a simple latch. There's a little button you press behind the headrest, and you can hear it release electronically, and then you drop this center armrest, and you have cup holders and a little storage area, and of course a nice little armrest to make your existence more comfortable in back. But the big news in the back seat of the Plaid is the screen in the center back here facing the...
What in the...
electronic door release when you're climbing out. And next up we move on to the back seat in the Plaid, and the first...
Being in business is like being a gladiator. Think about it. What sport would somebody get in?
Thing you notice back here is it's way better than the outgoing Model S model. Like I said, the entire interior was redesigned, and one benefit was more interior room, especially for the back seat, and you can really tell. I now have a lot more space back here, leg room, knee room, headroom, just a lot more space in the back seat in the Plaid. And the first thing you notice back here is it's way trim, and so you might damage the trim because of that. So use the electronic door release when you're climbing out. And next up we move on to the back seat in the Plaid, and the first thing you notice back here is it's way better than the outgoing Model S model. Like I said, the entire interior was redesigned, and one benefit was more interior room, especially for the back seat. Model S model, like the rest, to make your existence more comfortable in back. But the big...
Look at this again. Okay, Henri.
Space back here, leg room, knee room, headroom, just a lot more space in the back for rear. More space back here, leg room, knee room, headroom, just a lot more space in the back for rear passengers. Really tell. I now have a lot more space back here, leg room, knee room, headroom, just a lot more space in the back for rear passengers. really tell. I now have a lot more space back here, leg room, knee room, headroom, just a lot more space in the back for rear passengers, which is nice since this is ultimately like a people-carrying family sedan. Also worth noting, you do have 3 across seating back here. A lot of high-performance 4-door cars are 2 in the front, 2 in the back, but not this one. You have 3 seats, a middle seat, seat belts, so you have 5 total seats in the Plaid. Now, if you want a center armrest, you also have that possibility here. Strangely enough, it's electronically released. There's not just a simple latch, there's a little button you press behind the headrest, and you can hear it release electronically, and then you drop this center armrest, and you have cup holders, a little storage area, and of course a nice little armrest to make your existence more comfortable in back. But the big news in the back seat of the Plaid is the screen in the center back here facing the rear seat occupants. There are several different things you can control in the screen. One is your climate controls. You can pop into the screen and adjust the fan speed here, as you can see, and you can also adjust the climate control temperature in back, but again, no vents. Instead, the vents are hidden above the little screen, tiny little vents that force out air very quickly to make it comfortable back here. Unfortunately, one drawback of all the hidden vents, most cars with rear climate control have vents on the sides along the B-pillars, and because Tesla wanted to hide all the vents, they didn't put any there, and so you're only getting air kind of right from the middle from a relatively small vent, and it doesn't do a great job of cooling down the rear on a really hot day like today. You could definitely use a few more rear vents back here. But anyway, speaking of rear seat climate, here's another great feature of the screen. You can turn on the heated seats, and that includes a heated center seat. Not just the outboard rear seats are heated, but the middle seat is too, which you never really see on any car because most people don't use the middle rear seat, but it's heated in the Plaid. But by far the coolest part of this screen is the entertainment component of it. You have a little film reel icon. You tap that, and then you can access several different entertainment apps built into this screen. You have Netflix, Hulu, Twitch, and of course the finest one, YouTube, where you can watch some of your favorite content creators make videos if you'd like. Now, one other really cool thing about this rear seat screen, it also comes with video games just like up front, and it even comes with a handheld console. It's not included in this car, unfortunately. This car doesn't have the video game system back here, but that's an option you can get on your Plaid, a built-in video game system with a Tesla-specific video game console so that kids can play back here while you're driving them along. Or kids can play in the back their video games, and the people up front can also play their video games on the front arcade. This car has multiple video game systems. Not bad for the quickest car ever made. And next we move outside the Plaid, where there are quite a few more quirks and features, starting with simply getting inside. This is the key you get when you buy a Plaid. It's sort of sleek, it's shaped like a Plaid, and it has no buttons. That's because the car can detect when you're walking up to it, and as you approach with the key in your pocket, you can see the door handles pop out. That's when the car is unlocked, and then you just walk up, pull on the door handle, and you can climb right in. And it's the opposite when you walk away. As you walk away, the car senses you have left, and then eventually it locks the doors, and then you're all set. You don't ever have to take the key out of your pocket. You don't even have to like tap the door handle. The car recognizes everything. Now, it is worth noting there are some buttons hidden on the key you can tap to manually lock or unlock the doors in case it isn't working. Have left, and then eventually it locks the doors, and then you're all set. You don't ever, when you walk away. As you walk away, the car senses you have left, and then eventually it locks the doors, and then you're all set. You don't ever have to.
Okay, hold on. I don't know if you noticed that right about the 12-second mark. Feedback speed mode.
The car senses you have left, and then eventually it locks the doors.
You notice how the trees sway back a little bit, like right around the 13-second mark?
Have left, and then eventually it locks the door.
Yeah, right actually at the 14-second mark.
It locks the doors.
Yep. You know what that means? It means some time has passed. It means you kind of like
have left, and then eventually it locks the doors, and then you're all set. You don't ever have to take the key out of your pocket. You don't even have to like tap the door handle, and it's the opposite when you walk away. As you walk away, the car senses you have left, and then eventually it locks the doors, and then you're all set. You don't ever have to take the key out of your pocket. The car senses you have left, and then eventually it locks the doors, and then you're all set. You don't ever have to take the key out of your pocket. You don't even have to like tap the door handle. The car recognizes everything. Now, it is worth noting there are some buttons hidden on the key you can tap to manually lock or unlock the doors in case it isn't working, but in my experience it actually worked pretty well, and it recognized the moment I left and the moment I walked up each time. Now, speaking of entering the car, here's a brilliant Tesla idea. The spare key isn't a key itself or a fob. Instead, it's a credit card. This thing here is your spare key, and that way if you misplace your key, whatever, you got this in your wallet at all times, so you can still get access to your car and drive away, and that is a pretty brilliant feature, a spare key that is a credit card. Another cool feature on the outside in terms of accessing stuff is the charge port, which is brilliantly integrated into the taillights and the rear reflector on the driver's side. You just tap the reflector and then it pops open, revealing the charge port, and then of course you plug the car in and it charges. On the other side, you have a reflector there that's just a reflector, not a charge port at all. It has no other function. You have a hidden charge port behind a reflector. That is pretty cool. And the cool continues with some other great upgrades to the exterior for the Plaid model. Now, in order to create this high-performance, ultra-fast car, Tesla needed bigger tires. And that meant wider tires, and that meant they needed to widen the car itself. So, the Model S Plaid is a little wider than the regular Model S. When you look at the front of the car, if you're very familiar with the Model S, you can tell it's a little wider, a little more aggressive, and a little bit more muscular. Frankly, it's pretty difficult to tell actually, unless you have the two next to each other, but when you do, it is very obvious that the Plaid is just a little wider, a little more aggressive. With that said, there are no other major upgrades to the outside of the Plaid that let you know this is the special one. These wheels are optional, only available on the Plaid, these 21-inch wheels. So if you see those, you'll know it's a Plaid, unless someone changed out the wheels in their regular Model S. They're not necessarily a dead giveaway either. The only other real way you can tell, aside from the wider track, is the Plaid badge in back, but it is very tiny, very subtle, and most people won't even notice it. And I love that. There's something subtle about driving around in the fastest accelerating car ever made, and nobody knows you're driving the fastest accelerating car ever made until you take off faster than anything else. But as cool as some of the upgrades are to the Plaid, these subtle changes to make it more aggressive and cooler than the regular one, I gotta call this car out for pretty bad quality, especially on the outside, and especially with the paint. In fact, the owner of this car, who has several different cars, sports cars, high-end brands, told me this is the worst car he has ever seen in terms of paint quality. A good example of that is here on the mirror post. This is paint. It's painted on with these little chips here. It's already chipping off. Even though he's barely driven this car at all, it just looks terrible to come that way from the factory. He said it was like that on delivery day. Same deal on the A-pillar here. You can see there's like this weird texture to the paint that just doesn't look good. It's almost like a decal was there and ripped off, but that's how the paint is on this car. And the owner said his detailer couldn't remove it no matter what substance they use. It's just not very good. And it's not just the paint. These door handles on the Model S that pop out when you unlock the doors are kind of notoriously problematic, and early Model S's have them fail fairly regularly, and I've noticed in this car they're already starting to be kind of troublesome, especially the driver one. When you go to open the door handle, it pops out, and then you pull it and it pops out a little bit more. When you shut the door, it goes back in that little distance, so it's ready for you to pull it again, except on the driver door, it doesn't always do that. Sometimes it stays popped out. It's like stuck in place, and then you have to manually kind of push it in order to make the door handle usable again, and then you can pull the door and open it another time. This happens, I would say, 1 out of every 2 or 3 times I try to open the driver's side. It's just not great quality for a brand new car, especially considering these door handles aren't new technology. Tesla's been using them for years. And Tesla, I hate to say it, is famous for this kind of thing. They just don't build cars with the same level of quality as most other brands. Tesla people hate when you talk about this stuff, but it really is a problem. And it's less of a problem on the Model 3, where the car costs $30-some thousand and it's being sold to a guy who's really excited to show his friends that he got this cool new Tesla. At $130,000 for a Plaid, the people buying this have had other high-end cars. They own several vehicles, and when they compare the two and see these kind of errors, it doesn't look good for Tesla. Let's just put it that way. And next up, we move on to the cargo areas in this car, starting with the one in back, which is quite large, a function of this car being a hatchback rather than a sedan, which is kind kind of how everybody thinks about it, but it is a hatchback. And like I said, one of Tesla's big selling points with this car is that you can get an entire bicycle in here without having to remove a wheel, which is crazy for such a fast car, and frankly, just about any sedan. That's a pretty cool feature. Also worth noting in the cargo area, a couple of interesting items. For one, most of the floor is removable, and when you remove it, you can see there's more cargo storage underneath the floor for items that maybe you don't want rolling around in the back, or you want a little bit more privacy. You have space for those too. Now, it's also worth noting back here, you can unlatch the seats. You have these two little buttons that look like window switches for the seats on either side and back. You pull those and the rear seats unlatch. Unfortunately, they do not fold down automatically. You still have to walk up and kind of push the seats and fold them down. It would be nice to have that auto fold down, especially in a car this size, but probably most people won't really be putting the seats down that often, and having the ability to unlatch them is still pretty nice. And also I want to cover the other cargo area, the one up front, the front trunk. Now, you can open this in one of two ways. One, you can press the sort of front portion on the key fob. If you hold that down, the trunk will pop open, as you can see, and then you just lift it open from there. Or you go into the infotainment screen and there's a little icon for frunk, which of course is front trunk, except combined into one word. Anyway, you press that and that will also open the frunk, and then you have access to a little cargo area up here. Not a lot of space up here, but a little bit more in case you max out what's in back, or you want something in a smaller space or with a little bit more privacy. Now, might as well also talk power, since, well, this is normally where I talk about power with cars. Obviously no engine here, but the car still has over 1,000 horsepower. Tesla says 1,020 horsepower, 1,050 pound-feet of torque, or with a little bit more privacy. Now, might as well also talk power, since, well, this is normally where I talk about power with cars. Obviously no engine here, but the car still has over 1,000 horsepower. Tesla says 1,020 horsepower, 1,050 pound-feet of torque. Unbelievable numbers, thanks to 3 electric motors, which is a lot, and it makes this car really, really fast. Just how fast overall? I mentioned earlier it'll do 200 miles an hour, but that's not exactly true. Tesla says it can do 200, but right now these are all limited to 163 miles per hour. Eventually there will be a software update that takes them up to the full 200, but right now they are limited to a much lower speed. Still, 163 is pretty fast. 200 would be bonkers, just like everything else about this car. And so that's a thorough tour of the quirks and features of the Tesla Model S Plaid. Now it's time to get it out on the road and see how it drives. All right, here we go, driving the Plaid. I cannot even begin to explain how excited I have been to do this. Before I get started, I do want to talk about this quality. Quality of this car is just not really ideal. I mentioned the paint issues, I mentioned the door handle, but it goes further than that. It's also like interior quality. It's fine in here, but it's not really that great. And it's funny because yesterday I drove the new S-Class, and I'm not sure if that review has gone up yet or it will soon, whatever, but I drove them back to back by chance. And this car just isn't as nice. The stuff in here is nowhere near as nice. You open the door and you get this sort of generic plastic door sill and this kind of cheap looking carpeting, frankly. Now, I admit to you that a lot of people don't necessarily look for those things. They want the performance, but a lot of people want the opposite. They want the highest quality car and the performance is secondary. And if that's you, for the money, this car is not as impressive as it could be compared to like real luxury sedan rivals. But anyway, next up, let's move on to driving the Plaid. I want to start with the yoke. A lot of controversy about this, like I mentioned before. A lot of people say it's not good at low speeds. Like making U-turns and tight turns and that sort of thing. My own experience, agreed, it is not good. However, it isn't as bad as I expected it to be. You can kind of use the top of the yoke as if it was like a circular steering wheel and kind of push on it a little bit. I think with some getting used to, it actually wouldn't really be so bad. But anyway, on to the real driving fun of this car. And I'm gonna start with what everybody wants to do. Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God. My God, so bad. But anyway, on to the real driving fun of this car. And I'm gonna start with what everybody wants to do. Oh my God! Oh my God! my God. There is no acting involved in what I just did. I had not punched it before. And now that I have, new worlds have opened up. Oh my God. You know, I drove the Taycan Turbo S, and that was like this. And I said to myself, at the time, it was like a year and a half ago, and I said to myself, this is it. This is the fastest I'll ever go, and now I know what it's like to like go as fast as a person can go. And this feels like a different world. I can't even describe it. Warp speed. It's like everything is coming at you so fast. And the owner of the car told me, he said, before you floor it, make sure the wheel's straight. And I was like, this guy has a lot of Ferraris. And I thought, well, I can handle this. But he's right. Make sure the wheel's straight. It's like nothing I've ever driven. Ever. And it's funny because electric cars, I kind of criticize them sometimes because, yeah, they're really fast when you start accelerating hard. But when you get faster and faster, they sort of slow down. Well, that might be true of this, but I looked down at one point, I was going 110. And so, I mean, even if it does slow down above that speed, it's not really relevant, ultimately. It requires you to completely rethink everything you've ever thought about automotive speed. I have to do it again. Oh my God. It's the craziest roller coaster you've ever been on in your entire life, is what it is. It's also kind of funny because I've driven everything. I don't know how many people who've driven the Plaids yet have. I've driven the Koenigseggs, the Bugattis, the Pagani, everything for LaFerrari. And so it's even more amazing, I think, for me, in a sense, because the experience of those cars is quite something. You go there that day and I mean, this is a big moment. You're terrified. You've called your insurance company beforehand to give them information. Hey, I'm going to drive this expensive car. You're nervous. You're thinking, oh my God, this is such a special thing. This is just a car a dude can buy. This isn't like that. This doesn't have that sense of occasion. You can just do this, and yet you're faster than all that stuff. I have to do it again. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm both blown away at this experience and mortified that regular people are going to have access to this. I just can see the headlines now. There's going to lead to some stuff. And it's not going to be just Tesla. Porsche's going to come out with a faster Taycan, and the Audi RS e-tron GT, and blah blah blah. These cars are coming. It doesn't require skill anymore to afford a car this fast. And the handling impression, the steering is certainly better than the handling. The steering is amazing. You turn the steering wheel and it's like instant because they've kind of tuned it for that. The handling though, it's just a big car. The Model 3 performance definitely acceleration for sure. How could it? Acceleration's the greatest of any car in the world. Handling is pretty good, I would say, for a sedan. And so there you have it. The Tesla Model S Plaid, the world's quickest car, the fastest accelerating production car ever made, a four-door sedan with a video game console in back. It is unbelievable, truly amazing, and I'm thrilled that I had the chance to review it. And now it's time to give the Plaid a Doug score.
Probably if I could get 7.
Starting with the weekend categories and styling, the Model S design is old by now, very familiar and not very cutting edge. Plus, I've always found the Model S design surprisingly generic. Plaid looks a bit better than the normal one, but it's still not exactly special or beautiful, and it gets a 6 out of 10. Acceleration, easy one, 10 out of 10. Handling is fine, not amazing, but good for a car this size, and it gets a 6 out of 10. Fun factor is strong, the acceleration is truly incredible, but some other metrics like all-out handling and precision suffer a bit, and it gets an 8 out of 10. Cool factor is good, especially right now. The Model S isn't amazingly cool, it's been out so long, it's pretty common, but the Plaid is very neat and hot at the moment, and it gets a 7 out of 10 for a total weekend score of 37 out of 50. Next up are the daily categories and features. This car is very well equipped with a lot of amazing stuff, including fantastic autopilot, which I didn't even touch on in the video because I was so enamored with the acceleration. Anyway, it gets a 9 out of 10, falling just short of a perfect score as it lacks some top luxury features like massaging seats or 4-wheel steering or more seat adjustments, the real ultra crazy stuff. Comfort is normal for a car like this, and it gets gets a 7 out of 10. Quality is fine, it's good but not great, and it's not helped by Tesla's track record. It gets a 6 out of 10. Practicality is excellent with a roomy interior and cargo space, and it gets a 7 out of 10. Finally, value, and this is a great one. It's not a perfect car, but it delivers a lot. Even for its relatively high price, it's a good value, and it gets a 7 out of 10 for a total daily score of 36 out of 50. Added up, and the Doug score is 73 out of 100, which places it here against high-performance sedan rivals. The Model S Plaid is the new all-time four-door car Doug score champion, beating out the Taycan, the Mercedes-AMG GT63, and everything else, and it's only 1 point shy of the best score I've ever given out, which went to the amazing McLaren F1 and Speedtail. The Plaid is truly fantastic.
Wow, yeah, that's an amazing car.
Fantastic, and it's quite possibly the best all-around car ever made.
Yeah, it's an electric car.
This is the 2020 Porsche Taycan, and it is the most important car of the year. That's because it's the first electric car to generate as much hype and excitement as on your preference. Another interesting quirk in the backseat of the Cross Turismo is the climate controls, which are controlled by a little screen in the back. Yet another screen in this car. And you can use this screen to adjust, again, your temperature, your fan speed, turn on your heated rear seats, that sort of thing. Although, worth noting, once again, your rear seat climate vents are fixed in place unless you adjust them using the screen. You go into a little menu in the screen and you can adjust where the climate vents are blowing air in the back. So even in the back seat of this car, you have to use the screen to adjust the climate vent placement. You can't just move the vent. You have to go into the screen and do it that way. Vastly overcomplicated. And next up, we move on to the cargo area. Now, earlier I pressed the little button on the key fob to open the tailgate, but you can also open it back here. There's this little button right in the center above the license plate. You push that and then it pops open. And so push, pop open, and you can see the cargo area. Nothing particularly unusual or especially weird in here, but it is a very practical station wagony cargo area. You have little hooks for groceries that you can pull out and put your grocery bags on. And you also have little extra storage compartments, netting, these compartments on the side. This little one in the front you can lift up for extra underfloor storage. There's a lot of practical storage components back here like you would expect from a wagon and not like you would really expect in a Porsche, but it has them. And speaking of cargo storage in this car, worth noting, this cargo area isn't the only one in this vehicle. There's also a front cargo area. You press the little front trunk button on the key fob and it pops up, and then you unlatch it, you open it up, and you can see a little cargo compartment in here. Not huge by any means, but big enough for you to store stuff in here. This is sort of a Porsche hallmark. The Porsche sports cars have had a front trunk for a long time too, and now the Taycan does as well. Since there's no engine up front, they can put some storage up there. But anyway, on to the next quirk, one of the single most overblown criticisms in the entire car industry is the name of this vehicle, Taycan Turbo. But it's electric, it doesn't have a turbo. They just call it the Turbo. It doesn't even mean anything. Yeah, folks, and the Porsche Cayenne isn't a pepper. Welcome to the world of marketing. This happens. They call it the turbo because it's fast. I get that it doesn't really have a turbo, so it's not technically a turbo, but a lot of names are given to a lot of things that don't really match up. This is the latest. Deal with it. I can't believe there's not more outcry about how the Toyota Highlander isn't actually conquering the highlands. But people freak out about turbo. Get over it, and that's what they're going to call it. Now, other interesting quirks back here, probably the quirkiest quirk back here is the light bar going across the back, and specifically, when you look into the light bar, it has this sort of futuristic, like, computer chip circuit design that is very interesting. I guess intended to make you fully aware that this is a futuristic, special, not normal Porsche model. Unfortunately, it doesn't actually light up with this cool circuit design. Instead, it just lights up straight across, like basically every other Porsche and a lot of other modern cars with light bars. But it is cool to see it during the day with all these little circuit-looking things in there. It's certainly distinctive. Now, a couple other notable items back here. For one, the spoiler in back is fixed in place. I mention this because other Porsche models, especially other Porsche turbo models, have an active spoiler that will like rise up at certain speeds. Not so here. It's fixed, which is probably the only way to do it on a station wagon hatchback. It would be hard to get an active spoiler back here. Additionally, I want to talk styling, and specifically, I love it. I think this car looks great. I think the styling is fantastic. I like the regular Taycan. I think it looks both bold and futuristic and Porsche-like, frankly. They did a great job of creating it. And I love wagons, and so putting the cool Taycan design with a practical wagon body style, I think they killed it. I think this really looks great. Frankly, to me, it looks better than the standard Taycan. One of the most beautiful Porsche models on sale today. Truthfully, I really mean that. And finally, one other item I want to discuss is pricing. Now, a regular base model Taycan, not the Cross Turismo, the regular sedan, starts around $80,000. The Cross Turismo starts a little over $90,000. It's a pretty big difference in pricing, but Porsche tells me the Cross Turismo adds some important equipment in addition to its station wagon body style to help justify the price increase. For example, the Cross Turismo comes standard with air suspension, which is an option on the regular Taycan. The Cross Turismo comes standard with a panoramic sunroof, which is an option on the regular Taycan, and the Cross Turismo has a bigger standard level battery which offers more power and better range. Porsche says when you add up all of the differences, the Taycan is only maybe about $1,500 more expensive when you factor everything in, and then you have to think about there's a little bit more cargo space, a little bit more passenger space, and of course a little bit more ground clearance. Now the price difference between the Taycan models actually gets smaller as you go up in the trim levels, so when you get to the Turbo and the Turbo S, they're only actually a couple $1,000s more expensive than the regular sedan version in order to get the Cross Turismo. And so those are the quirks and features of the Porsche Taycan Turbo Cross Turismo. Now it's time to get it out on the road and see how it drives. All right, driving the Taycan Turbo Cross Turismo. And I have the electric sports sound turned on. It's hard to hear when you accelerate. It really does sound like what they thought a spaceship would sound like in the 50s or the 60s. So first thought driving this car, I have already driven the regular Taycan Turbo S about a year ago, a little over, and I loved it. And there's a couple of great things about it that have translated to this car. For one thing, it just drives so well in terms of steering and handling. This, I said it then and I'll say it again, this is a Porsche. It drives like a Porsche, it feels like a Porsche. When you drive this car, it doesn't feel like some compromised EV. It handles incredibly well. It is absolutely flat on the ground when you're cornering. The weight of this car, which is not insubstantial, it's like 5,000 pounds, is pretty mitigated by the unbelievable job they do with the handling here. Completely flat, very predictable in corners. It just drives like a sports car. Porsche knows how to build cars like this, and they did a great job with this one. This also feels like a luxury car. Very nice interior, very high quality. Obviously, a step above Tesla. You know, that's my biggest criticism with Tesla's interior quality. Is just not all that great, especially given the price point. But this is in keeping with what you would expect from a Porsche and from a car at this price level. And of course, the other nice benefit here is acceleration. This is insane. Oh my God. Whoa. This is insane. absolutely crazy. Porsche says 0 to 60 in 3.1 seconds. Personally, I feel like it's in the high 2s. It also just feels faster than that because of the instant torque, instant acceleration when you step on the accelerator. And it's just unbelievable. Just G-forces. I mean, it just throws you completely back. And you know, when you get going, when you hit 70, 80, 90 miles an hour, it starts to feel not as fast. You know, the big benefit of an electric car is right at the beginning. And obviously there are hypercars that are just as quick as this, 0 to 60 in 2.8, 2.9, but they have to build power. The real benefit here is it just kicks you right when you're first accelerating, and it is a crazy thing. I think the Taycan is probably one of the best all-around cars in the market today. It steers and handles like a Porsche. It accelerates like a hypercar. It is electric, which is obviously fantastic, both for the environment and like the future of the world and technology and blah, blah, blah. There are great things about this car. The only drawback is you combine all that great stuff into one car, expect to pay up. This thing is like $165,000. It is insane money for a car. And so I would say this car checks every single box except prepare to just pay insane money. And so that's the 2021 Porsche Taycan Turbo Cross Turismo. I love fast wagons, and I am so thrilled that one has made its way into the electric vehicle space, even if Porsche is going to try to convince you that it's a crossover. This is a seriously cool car, my favorite version of the Taycan, and if I were buying a Taycan, I would skip the sedan and definitely get this one. And now it's time to give the Taycan Cross Turismo a Doug score.
Starting with the weekend categories and styling, the Taycan Turbo Cross Turismo looks great. Not like a beautiful sports car, but really nice, and it gets a 7 out of 10. Acceleration, Porsche says 0 to 60 in 3.1 seconds, which gives it a 9 out of 10. Handling is sharp, among the very best four-door cars, and it gets a 6 out of 10. Fun factor is huge. You lose the engine sound and shifting gears, but you gain immense acceleration and Porsche's signature handling, and it gets an 8 out of 10. Cool factor is also huge. It's an exciting car, especially in wagon form to car enthusiasts, and it gets an 8 out of 10 for a total weekend score of 38 out of 50. Next up are the daily categories and features. The Cross Turismo has some great stuff, but it lags a bit behind with all the latest modern tech, especially when it comes to autonomous driving equipment, and it gets an 8 out of 10. Comfort is fine for a car like this, and it gets a 7 out of 10. Quality is excellent, and it gets an 8 out of 10. Practicality is good, a bit better than the sedan, thanks to more standard equipment, more rear seat space, and slightly more cargo room, and it gets a 6 out of 10. Finally, value, and it's fine. It offers everything, but you have to pay a lot for it, and electric driving range isn't as good as it could be. Range has been a controversial topic with the Taycan, as the US government EPA differs greatly from the global standard rating. The EPA says the Turbo Taycan sedan does 212 miles of range, for instance, versus 281 from the other standard, but assuming the truth is somewhere in between, it could be a bit better, especially for the price point. Anyway, value, it gets a 5 out of 10, which gives it a total daily score of 34 out of 50. Added up, and the Doug score is 72 out of 100, which places the Turbo Cross Turismo here against relevant cars, right at the top, tied with some of the best rivals like the Audi RS6, the AMG E63 wagon, and the AMG GT63 four-door, plus the regular Taycan Turbo S sedan. This is a great car, but expect to pay up for it.
Moving day means you're in for a big transition. CubeSmart makes self-storage as easy as possible. Online or in person, we put the focus on you. Click now to learn more.
This is a 2014 Ferrari Ff, and it is a Ferrari family car bargain. Those are words I never thought I would say. Ferrari family car bargain. But that's exactly what this is. It had a sticker price of almost $350,000, but now you can pick one up for around $100,000, and it has room for your kids. Sort of. Today, I'm going to review the FF and show you what I mean. Before I get started, be sure to check out Cars and Big Ferrari Lineup. The 612, the 456, the 412. These aren't exactly the most iconic and well-regarded Ferraris. So, about 10 years ago, Ferrari decided to shake things up a bit. They would still make a 4-seater V12, but they would do something a little different. That different was the FF. This car still has a V12, a 6.3-liter V12 with 650 horsepower. But the big coupe look is gone. Instead, this is a hatchback for added practicality. Maybe even crazier, it's all-wheel drive. Pretty much every Ferrari in history has been rear-wheel drive until this came along, again for added practicality. So you have 4 seats, a hatchback, and all-wheel drive. Is this finally a practical Ferrari? Well, not exactly. You see, back when this car was new, it had a sticker price of just under $350,000, which kind of negates a lot of the usability. Because at that price, you're not exactly going to let your kids eat chips in the back seat, and you're certainly not going to be taking it in the snow. But then depreciation happened. A lot of depreciation. These days, the cheapest 2012 FF models hover around $100,000, and even a nice low-mileage 2014 like this one could be around $130,000, which is a pretty good bargain for a modern V12 Ferrari that does 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds. Of course, it's still not cheap, but given the price and the performance and the practicality, the FF is a bargain, and it's a lot more familyable than any Ferrari before it. So today I'm going to take you on a tour of the FF, and I'm going to show you all of the interesting quirks and features of the family-friendly Ferrari. Then I'm going to get it out on the road and drive it, and then I'll give it a Doug score. All right, I'm going to start. Start the quirks and features of the FF by giving props to the owners of this one. I never do this, but I thought it was warranted in this case. Not only did the owners of this FF let me film this video in the rain, which a lot of Ferrari people wouldn't do, but they have 3 dogs and they use this car as transport for the dogs, which a lot of Ferrari people wouldn't do. And more importantly, this is their garage. That's right, AMG wagon and a Ferrari FF next to each other. These are their 2 cars. These people basically live my dream life with my dream cars. And if you ever needed proof that there are actually people out there willing to spend big money for wagons or hatchbacks and use them as intended, well, here is the proof you need. Anyway, next up I want to move on to the stuff that makes Ferrari and car. Now, when you put the seat back, you can see there's not an enormous amount of room back here, but it's not that bad, I suppose, in comparison to cars with really tiny back seats like the Ferrari Portofino or a Porsche 911. This is tolerable for an adult, not comfortable, and it would be fairly reasonable for a kid. With that said, a few items worth noting about the back seats. For one thing, there's only 2 of them. There's no middle seat back here, so you can't buy this thinking you'll get a 5-seat vehicle, because that's not what this is. But with that said, there are some surprisingly nice amenities back here. In between the seats, you have a large center console. You open up the middle part, and there's a little storage area in there with a charger, so you could charge devices back here if you were transporting your kids around. Now, further forward in this center console, open up this lid and you have cup holders. Not exactly huge ones, big enough for a lot of kids' drinks, but they're there for people seated in the back. And you also have climate vents back here. You can see the Ferrari horse in the middle, and you can adjust their positioning and the amount of air that comes through them. So climate control, storage, charging, This is a family car back seat. And to drive that point home even further, yes, there are child seat anchors back here. You can pop off this panel and install a child seat safely and legally in the back of your Ferrari. That's a real surprise when you think about Ferraris from the old days. With that said, one of the biggest issues in the back seats is getting out. They're very deep and low, and so you kind of slide back into them, and trying to get out is really a battle with gravity and, of course, size, but it's not that difficult. And next up, we move on to the front seat of the FF, where there is a lot to discuss in the way of quirks and features. I want to start when you first open the door. You can see some seat controls on the side of the seat. You have all your typical stuff there to move the seat around, but you also have a little dial and a diagram next to it with some arrows pointing up. That is the dial to turn on the heated seat in this car. You can't actually see it when you're sitting in the seat. You just have to kind of feel for it and pull it up to turn on your heated seat. Interestingly, there's also a cooled seat in here, and it's the same setup. A dial on the side of the seat that you can't really see. You have to just kind of move with your fingers and hope it delivers the amount of cool that you want. Definitely an old school, weird way to do heated and cooled seat controls, very much with the Italian character of this car. And next up, once you climb inside and sit down, a rather amusing quirk, because this car has such long doors, in order to make it easier to access the rear seats, it can be hard to reach behind you and get your seat belt. Fortunately, Ferrari has thought of that. There is an electronic arm that automatically extends to deliver your seatbelt once you get in the car and close the door. Then you put the seatbelt on, start the car, and the arm goes back into its home until it is needed again. You'll see this occasionally in two-door cars where it can be hard to reach behind you and get your seatbelt, but I always find that it's such a strange quirk, an automated seatbelt delivery system. And next up, moving further inside, I want to talk steering wheel, because this car has a crazy one. Like a lot of modern Ferraris, there are a lot of controls on this wheel. I'm going to start with this little switch to the right, which adjusts your drive modes. That's right, you don't have a little dial in the center console, you have this very official looking switch on the steering wheel, and you can choose between snow, wet, comfort, sport, or traction off. I guess that would be on a racetrack. Now, like I mentioned, this car has all-wheel drive, but the all-wheel drive system is only active when this car is in snow, wet, or comfort modes. If you're in sport or the track mode, it's rear-wheel drive only, I guess to facilitate higher performance driving. Otherwise, you might need that all-wheel drive if you get into a snowy or rainy situation. But beyond that switch, there's a lot more to cover on the steering wheel, like, for example, your turn signals. This little button on the right turns on your right turn signal. Same deal with this button on the left for your left turn signal. There's no stalk coming off the steering column to turn them on, like basically every other car. And it continues from there. This little button with a light on it lets you flash your brights. Again, no stalk coming off the steering column to do that. And over on the right, this little button lets you turn on your windshield wipers. Again, no stalk protruding from the steering column. You have a button on your steering wheel. And one other interesting steering wheel control on the upper half of the steering wheel around the rim, that's where your horn is. You just tap it with your thumb and then you can honk. Now, there are two main reasons that they've done this. One is they wanted all controls to be within easy reach of the driver. You're in a racetrack or a high-speed situation, you don't want to have to reach over to find some button or some switch. You want it to be right there within your finger's reach, so everything's on the steering wheel. They also do it this way because there's no room on the steering column for stalks to be coming off. That's where they have the paddle shifters. You can see they're large metal, very satisfying to pull, not cheap plastic crap like you get in a lot of cars. And in order to make them that big and high quality, it took up the space that the turn signal and wiper stalks usually are, so those items got moved to the steering wheel. And next up, moving on to some other interesting controls throughout the interior. How about this button in the middle that says PS? That stands for Power Start, which is Ferrari's version of launch control.
So there's still a northeast wind here, so which means the low will have to be trying to find where the center is. See, there's some disconnect right here. Okay. Here you're having a northwest flow right here. However, here you're having a northeast flow. So there's a little bit of disconnect between the surface winds and the winds aloft. Could be because of the shear coming in. Yep, I'm actually thinking this is the shear now. You see the low level clouds right here? How they're moving northwest. I would say the center is somewhere in this area, so it's still towards the western side of the system. Linda is still going strong. Wow. Damn, look at Linda with this huge eye. Linda does not want to weaken. Wow. That's how it became a Category 2 hurricane right here, because it went to the south. See where all the farmland is. See, there's less green here. You can almost see it here. All this farmland here. Forest, farmland. let's look back at the satellite imagery. Right over the center. What in the world is happening over Utah? Wow, that is a lot of storms. That almost looks like a derecho. Oh my god, that is a lot of rain. Actually, yeah, flash flood warnings. Is that an upper level low over? Yep, there kind of is like a squall line approaching Utah. And this area is right in the worst part of the drought, so that's actually really good news that they're getting all that rain.